I think that putting anything in a museum changes how people look at it. I see no distinction between art and engineering. I mean, you can make pure art without engineering, but anything that has to do with construction has engineering involved. This is perhaps the art of engineering, or the engineering of art. They're intimately entwined. So the Custom Revolution exhibition is an exhibit of 24 motorcycles from around the world. We've got bikes from 7 countries and 17 different types of motorcycle in terms of the engines out of 24. So it's a remarkably diverse collection of what we call alternative custom motorcycles. Peak examples of a renaissance that's happened in motorcycle culture in the last 10 years. I was asked by the Petersen Museum if I was interested in helping them put together a show. So it was amazing to bring all that stuff into an actual museum. There have been a lot of shows, but there's never been a museum show featuring this scene. And it doesn't represent any particular style, because there's probably a dozen styles of motorcycle in the exhibit, but it does represent a movement and kind of a cultural moment. I've been calling this a renaissance in motorcycle culture, the likes of which we haven't seen since the 70s. And in the 70s, it was the same thing. There was clothing associated, there was filmmaking, there was writing and magazines and all this stuff, and things really died down after the 80s and 90s. So up to about 2009, there was a very chopper-based custom motorcycle scene that was the most visible example of what you would think of with custom motorcycle. And it got famous on television, and it was very elaborate and very baroque, and a lot of people made a lot of money selling expensive choppers that were basically unrideable. But things changed, so there was an economic recession, and out of the ashes of that chopper scene grew this new sort of handmade motorcycle aesthetic that was super eclectic and super international and wasn't about Harley Davidsons. It was about everything. Custom motorcycles go back to the origin of motorcycles. They've always been around, and they've just looked different and been celebrated in different ways at different times, or not celebrated. So in this instance, I'm hoping that framing them within a museum will make people think a little bit differently about what's happening with motorcycles, especially the artists who are working with motorcycles, because they really are incredible artists and artisans, fabricators, designers. I mean, these are clearly exceptionally well-designed motorcycles. They're eccentric, each one of them is unique, but they're design objects. You know, but this is the first time an institution has acknowledged that, yes, this is worth exhibiting. That's the most important part for me. Motorcycles really need the relationship between a person and the motorcycle. That's what the magic of a motorcycle is. So without a rider, a motorcycle is only half alive. It truly becomes alive when it's ridden, and there is a relationship between a person and this machine. I had a pretty good idea of some things that I wanted to include, some more radical examples of design and some more practical examples of design, but they all needed to be special. The Petersen's only criteria was that someone walking into this space who knew nothing about motorcycles would be wowed. So I thought, okay, we need wow bikes. Yeah, we've included 4 electric bikes in the show, and they're super important because they are the future, and they're starting to be customized, which is awesome. I think a lot of people think or are afraid that when we have an electric future, that's the end of the custom scene, and clearly it's not, because you can customize an electric motorcycle just the same as an internal combustion engine. So we have 22 different builders. They come from 7 different countries. We have bikes here from Indonesia, Vietnam, Spain, Ireland, Germany, Japan, and the United States. So what connects all these motorcycles is a purity of vision and intention, but mostly it's the success of how they've realized their ideas. Everything had to be beautifully realized, and so each one of these motorcycles, whether it's glossy or hand-hewn or filthy or gleaming, It doesn't really matter what the finish is or the style, scrambler, cafe racer, chopper, whatever. It just needed to be perfectly realized. I really don't know where the custom scene goes from here. You know, people have announced the death of the alternative custom scene for 5 years, and it doesn't seem to be going away. In fact, it seems to be getting more interesting and more convoluted and more experimental, which is very exciting. So as long as people want to keep building, you know, handmade motorcycles, there will be a custom scene. You know, these trends will go away, but the style remains.